say like fist or fuck is what I say.
Yeah.
But it's the like kiss or kill.
Exactly.
And it's this idea of, oh, are they gonna kiss or are they gonna kill each other? Are they gonna kiss or are they gonna kill each other? And that would have, that scene would have hit if that's what they went with.
I think you cracked it. That's good.
Hi everyone, I'm Madison.
And I'm Alex.
Welcome to the Writer's Room,
where we analyze media in all different forms and tell you why it works or why it doesn't.
Today, we are discussing the second episode of House of the Dragon, Season 1.
We covered the first episode, the pilot, in our last episode. If you haven't already, go check it out. This
episode is called The Rogue Prince. Before we get started, I want to give a spoiler warning. We are going to be spoiling anything in, obviously, this episode, the first episode, and pretty much the rest of the season.
We do reference the books and like Game of Thrones a lot. So if you're not aware of that stuff and you don't want it to be spoiled, you should probably go ahead and watch it first.
So the book Fire and Blood, the Song of Ice and Fire series, and the TV show Game of Thrones could potentially be spoiled.
All right.
Okay.
Let's get into it.
Summary.
Are you ready? I'm going to time you.
Yes.
I'm under a minute is what we're going for, right?
Okay.
Ready, set, go.
6 months has passed since episode 1 where Rhaenyra was named heir, and not a lot has changed. Daemon has taken Dragonstone, Alicent is getting close to Viserys, and Rhaenyra has not gained any respect from being named heir. Everyone insists Viserys should remarry, including Corlys and Rhaenys, who offer up their 12-year-old daughter, Laena. The small council overall considers this a good idea, although Viserys and everyone at home feels icky about it. Rhaenyra chooses Criston Cole to join the King's Guard. Daemon sends a letter inviting Viserys to his wedding to Mysaria. It's revealed here he stole the dragon egg, intended for Balon, Viserys' deceased child. Otto himself travels to Dragonstone to retrieve the egg. It looks like it's going towards bloodshed when Rhaenyra, flying on Syrax, manages to negotiate with Daemon and saves the day. Viserys scolds Rhaenyra for going to Dragonstone, but the two reconcile over the loss of her mom Emma and come to the conclusion Viserys must remarry as it is his responsibility as king. The episode ends with Viserys naming Alicent to be his wife, much to the dismay of Corlys, who in response plots with Daemon to take on the Crab King in the Stepstones. Is that good?
I was just at a minute.
Okay.
Nice. Good job. All we took was one episode to make it perfect.
Okay. So
before we start, I have a question for you.
Okay, yes.
So in the world of House of Dragons, the biggest difference is the dragons, right?
Yes.
I'm curious, what would your dragon be named?
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. So I love all the dragons when they're named like moon stuff or like the sky names. I think that's really cool. Like I think one of them's literally named Moon Dancer.
Yeah.
I love that one. Or like Dreamfire. Actually, that's really cute. So it'd probably be something super like mystical like that. Probably something to be that Moon Dancer's so good. So I can't just copy that, but it'd be something along those lines.
It's like also named Moon Dancer,
Right.
But it's like spelt weird. And
with a Y.
with an umlaut. Oh, that's good.
Yeah, like fire with a Y. It'd be something like that. I don't know.
Funny.
Do you have one in mind for yours?
Yeah, so that's funny that you like those. I like the other ones where they just sound really like Syrax or Crike, whatever, like those hard consonants. So
Yeah.
I thought Sarcaxis was a good name.
Okay, that is good. That's good.
It's a little
Little cheeky.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like my dragon would be a little cheeky.
Yeah.
You know? What color do you think your dragon would be?
I would hope purple.
Purple.
And then, so in the books, if you don't know this, they breathe different color fire. So the fire kind of like matches their scales. So if my dragon was like purple and its fire was purple,
that'd be cool.
I think that'd be really cool.
Deserve a name like Moon Dancier.
Right?
Okay, cool. I was curious. I would want mine to be green, I think. Green
Okay.
fire, green scales. That seems
That'd
cool
be
to
cool.
me. Anyway,
Yeah.
let's get into it.
Okay.
This is the first episode. We have the opening sequence.
Yeah. Okay. Wait. Let's start there.
And I can see how you would forget about it because it's terrible.
So the opening sequence is like blood just traveling through the halls of, I guess, the Red Keep, right? It's the Red Keep.
I don't think so.
You don't think
It's
it's
just
the Red
like
Keep?
stone everywhere. I don't know if it's supposed to be an actual place. If it were, I would say it's probably Dragonstone.
Oh, okay.
Maybe it is. Maybe we're missing something. But again, like as a series, you need to be good on your own merit, right?
Yeah.
I should not have to read the books and know what places it, like, it should just be cool. And I feel like the opening sequence of season 1 is very not cool.
Yeah, I just think it has a big shoes to fill because the first, Game of Thrones opening sequence is so cool. It's a map. It changes every time, sort of. You're looking for the differences. So it just has a lot.
It's made of all these cogs and pieces. Like, everybody has a piece to play in the story that's being told. It's very thought through. And this one, very lackluster. Like, I don't gain anything. And I get it's about bloodlines and things like that, but it's not very strong. What's cool about the opening, even episode to episode in Game of Thrones, they change where we are based on where the characters are. And I wrote down, we are placeless in the entire opening. And I understand that a lot of we're traveling less, especially due to the dragons, right? So it's, again, you just need to find another angle to make it cool, which I don't want to spoil too much, but we're recording this as most of season 2 is out. And season 2's opening is phenomenal. Really cool. The tapestry idea, that is very cool. My other idea would be, instead, maybe you're like flying on dragonback through like from that perspective, through like the 3D model that Viserys builds. That would be like that's very cool. Something like that. That would make the model more like important. And I don't know if you like see that you're on dragonback, but it would feel like you're soaring through the model. I think that'd be cool. I think that would have been my idea. Cool. All right. So now we can officially start the episode. So now getting into the first scene. Is this the council meeting or like the crab? No. So we start with the crab and they're like eating the people. Yeah. And I did write down like prosthetics looked very good. Yeah. The shots were very good. The sound design, I wrote disgusting in a good way. In a good way, right. It was disgusting, but it was very cool. Being a character that is more talked about than shown, it is cool that when it is shown, it's very different. Yeah. So I feel like they're doing a good job with the Crab King being a looming presence that's getting more like closer. I think that's doing well. I think so too. Then we go to the council. I think that's kind of like the big thing for this is that no one's taking the Stepstone seriously. Yeah. And that Rhaenyra is just still the cupbearer. She's still just sitting there. Yeah. And I think it explains that well. They say at some point it's been 6 months because Daemon's been where he shouldn't be for 6 months. So I would have rather had that more naturally shown. Yeah. But it's fine, right? I also think it could have been made more important that it's been 6 months. Mm-hmm. I just feel like more obvious would have been better. I wouldn't have even hated. We had time cards in the first episode. Why can't we could do another time card here 6 months later or something like that? Yeah. I think to really, you never want a reader, an audience member to be asking, wait, what? Hold on, wait, what happened? Where are we? You never want that, especially with a complex political drama. So I just wish from the get-go we knew immediately it's been 6 months. Or even, you have that gross little crab opening. It could have flashed from that to 6 months later or something. See what I mean? Yeah, something like that. I think the scene does a good job of establishing that Rhaenyra still, like, not much has changed for her, which makes sense. This is a spoiler for season 2. It's a really small one. In one of the first episodes of season 2, when you have Aegon and his kid, who's like 4 or something like that, and he literally brings his kid to the small council meeting to like learn. True. And I thought that was such a funny juxtaposition between Rhaenyra, who's like literally 10 years older than this kid at this point, who is the heir and is just pouring wine. And when she tries her hardest, she gives, honestly, not a bad idea. She says, let's use dragons. Yeah, like, that's not a bad idea. Which is like character motivated. I believe she would say that. I believe Viserys would not want to do that. But also don't act like no other Targaryen would have said that. Absolutely. Right? Yeah, for sure. And so they almost like laugh at her, which I think was really sad, honestly. It was really clear in this second episode, none of them ever wanted Rhaenyra to be queen. It was just the stepping stone to someone else. It was really, really clear after watching this episode. Yeah. And again, like, we open on the council, Corlys comes in, and it's just boring. Like, all these small council meetings are not a lot is going on, which is amazing because they're talking about things that are really, really cool on paper, right? This crab guy, like they're talking about a war between the free cities.
Yeah.
They're talking about like the heirs and what to do with Daemon, our main villain. And I don't care because, sorry.
No, you finish.
It's just, again, it's because everybody is just at a political meeting and nobody is having any character. Nobody's having any fun. There are no jokes. There are no poking at each other.
There's no actual political intrigue, you know?
Or there's no character intrigue, you know?
And that as well.
Very rarely does a meeting go by where Varys doesn't say something cutting somebody else or Littlefinger undermines somebody, you know?
Yeah. And that's, I think, where it falls short. And that it's just kind of boring because everything is very much just one-sided. And I don't think they're not giving us enough information also. So here's the thing. If you haven't read the books, Dragonstone is supposed to go to the heir. I don't think they say that.
I think anytime they say that they're going to be the heir of the Iron Throne, they pair it with Prince or Princess of Dragonstone. But I don't know if it's explicitly stated.
I just feel like maybe they could have. Explicitly stated that it's a big deal. Typically, the person who is the heir is the Lord of Dragonstone at that moment. They're the ones who are in charge of Dragonstone. And when I first saw this, because this is our second time through, I didn't get that. I didn't understand that it was important that he took Dragonstone. I just thought he took somewhere. But he's basically saying I should be heir by doing that. And I think you could have motivated that with dialogue and just saying he's spitting in our face with, see what I mean? By taking where the heir should be, right? Or something like that. Yeah. In a more poetic way. But I just think it could have been that simple of one line to make it clear how bad this is. Yeah. And that's all kind of the point of the small council meeting. They discussed what they're going to do about the Daemon issue as well.
And the main crux of these council meetings is that they say words, which is, again, a very easy way to tell, not show, which is what you don't want, right? So we don't see Daemon take over Dragonstone. We just open the episode and he's been there for 6 months. Yeah. Right. So I already need to sort of piece that in my head. And on top of that, they don't present these words in a very interesting way. So I tend to check out at these scenes, which is crazy to me because the small council scenes are some of my absolute favorite scenes in Game of Thrones, right? That's where the meat of the show usually is. So that's just something, especially coming off of watching Game of Thrones, it's very different, and I think it's different to their detriment.
Yeah, I just think no one is scheming, and that's sort of the point of King's Landing, is everybody scheming. Now that's harder, I will say, because it's pretty clear, like, the Targaryens are in charge. But I still think, we don't know who the heir is. Everyone has a mission. Everyone has a goal. Everyone has an objective, a tactic. And I just don't feel like I see those in these characters. Yeah. They're not driven by a desire. They just sort of want what they want. And they kind of say what they want. And that's sort of it to me. We can move on, I think. So Rhaenyra chooses Kristen Cole to be her King's Guard. That scene was funny. I said Otto was backseat driving the whole time. Yeah. Like, they clearly were babying her and put her on something they thought she could, quote, handle, you know? Yeah. And I thought it was fun seeing her make probably a smart choice of choosing someone. Yeah. Well, she made the Rhaenyra choice, right? So I think Otto maybe would have wanted her to choose someone that was...
he counseled. He was like, these two families are important for us to have as allies. And she was like, okay, Kristen.
Yeah. So I think she chose, she's doing her own thing. Yeah. And again, Otto doesn't like that.
Which is great. Good character. I like that we got to know a little more about Kristen. Like, the Riverlands he fought, he has battle experience. It's very cool. And again, you're giving us a good amount of information in a short amount of time. I think that was a tight scene.
And we see Rhaenyra and Otto butting heads, which is important. If Otto thinks he can't control someone, which I think is his big issue with Daemon, is he wants to be able to control and make moves. And he kind of can control Viserys, sort of. But he's seeing that he can't control Rhaenyra. Yeah. And I think that's a problem for him.
For sure. I think this probably goes into the next scene. I wrote down colors are still good throughout. I think specifically Allison, she had like a blue dress on, like a blue-green dress, and I thought it popped really well. And then just some like dynamic lightings in the Red Keep and stuff. The cinematography I thought was still pretty good at points in this episode.
Yeah, it was pretty, and I think it's important. It's a art.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important if it looks pretty, or specifically not.
Mm-hmm.
So we move on to Alicent and Viserys, who are getting closer.
I actually really liked this scene.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I thought it was cool because this was, I feel, the only scene where they actually did a good job of showing naturally that time has passed. Right?
Yeah.
In the first episode, they were very awkward. They were just, granted, like somebody just died, right? So they were sort of consoling over that. Now we're in here and Viserys is like telling her the history of the Targaryens. And it felt very genuine, very nice.
That's a good point. No, you're right. Because in the first one, he was like, what are you doing here?
Mm-hmm.
And in this one,
he was like showing off his little stone guys.
Yeah.
I thought that was well done.
And he was like, she's like, oh, did you build these? He's like, no, the stonemasons.
Yeah, exactly. And that contrasted with, there's another scene where Rhaenyra and Alicent are walking, right? And she's still like sort of dealing with this. And Alicent takes Rhaenyra to like the sept where she prays or whatever, right? And at that, I was like, girl, it's been 6 months. You've never taken her here before? Like her mom died 6 months ago,
I guess
right?
That's true.
And it's just another like, time has passed for the Alicent Viserys timeline, but time has not passed for the Alicent and Rhaenyra.
And then especially because, I mean, we open, right, with that small council meeting, and they're dealing with the exact same things that we dealt with in the first small council meeting in episode 1 6 months ago.
Yeah,
right?
And the only difference is Corlys said it's a little worse.
Yeah.
You know?
and Daemon is now somewhere else.
That's right, yeah. Daemon is off screen.
That's like the two things is that was Daemon and the Crab King and the Stepstones, and that's it. So yeah, it's pretty similar.
Yeah. I did say at this altar thing, they had a shot where like their hands were together and they showed like Alicent's messed up fingernails. I thought that was cool. Just like keep it there, you know?
So the scene with Alicent and Viserys, I think it ends where they talk about Rhaenyra, and he talks about how she hasn't been talking to him since Emma died.
Yes.
And it's kind of implied that Alicent is going to do something about this and use this to her gain, which is good. We see that in the next scene when they go to the sept. I think the point of that, the reason why she took her there at all, which is kind of sad if you think about it, that this is your friend and she's manipulating her.
Yeah. Well, it's a fun dynamic to play with because I do believe that Alicent does care about Rhaenyra, but at the same time, I do see her becoming more of a political player in this game, which is just really fun.
Well, if you look at what's been modeled to her, that the people in your life are people to manipulate. That's exactly, people you love are people to manipulate. That's exactly what Otto does to her.
Ooh.
And I just think that's what she's known. And Rhaenyra has been more fortunate to have people who truly love her, even though she does have issues with her and her father, but it's different, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where it goes.
And we know Viserys isn't a manipulator. Like he's just a swell guy.
Oh, exactly.
You know, so even though they are a little estranged, she's never been like, controlling people is how you do things, you know?
So I don't think I got this the first watch through because again, I wish it was more obvious. And maybe you could have done that with camera angles or just a little bit more, maybe the back and forth could have made it more obvious, but basically where Alicent she uses religion and her mother's death to convince Rhaenyra to speak with her father because that will make Viserys like Alicent more. Which she's playing the game in all caps.
That's good.
Do we want to move on to Viserys and Corlys and Rhaenys having their discussion?
Oh, I wrote down again. I know we sort of gushed about them last time. Rhaenys and Corlys have such good screen presence.
Yeah.
They're not even doing a lot, but I am so happy to see them.
They have good chemistry together. And I think they're one of the few characters that they gave a really strong personality to.
Yes.
Apparently in the books, Rhaenys is even stronger of a personality. And I kind of wish they would have gone that far. She's like a warrior. She's part Baratheon. And that's really played up. And I wish they would have made that
cool.
A little more obvious. But I do really like what they did with their character. That where she's wise, but she's also gonna make fun of people, and I think that's
exactly. Well, it's just
really
it's very 3-dimensional.
Yeah.
You know, like when you are strong, you know, it's fun to like see them having fun and laughing. It's great. It's really good.
And it can add some humor into the show that I do think is lacking a lot.
Mm-hmm. Do we want to go to the next scene, or do we want to talk about the next time Viserys is over there with Lena?
Let's keep talking about Viserys and Corlys and Rhaenys and Lena.
I agree. And I agree the showrunners should have done this also. This should have been one scene.
Oh, you think
where
so?
we get the proposal, you should marry our daughter Lena. And he's like, she's pretty young. And then she turns the corner and it's a 12-year-old girl.
That's a really good point. You're right.
Because it's the two scenes together are the same concept, right? It's this, she's young. And all that happens is we are told that she is young 2 or 3 times before we see her.
Yeah.
Where I feel like it would have been a much more shock, maybe like funny almost reveal of like, she's very young, and they could be like, yeah, but she'll like mature. And then we see a 12-year-old girl, like everybody's like, ooh,
the cutest little kid in the world.
Exactly.
Yeah. I actually think they did this a lot with a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
In this episode, the second half of this episode was a lot of like, here's this small snippet
continuation
of
the scene.
Yeah. And then a messenger or someone comes in.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lot of these weird transition scenes. So like the scene where Rhaenyra and Viserys are eating.
Yeah.
And then like it just like someone walks in, and then we have like Otto and Viserys talking, and then we have and someone walks in, and it just kept kind of happening, that exact same thing. And it felt choppy to me.
Yeah.
And it felt repetitive.
For sure. Well, one of my big notes for this episode is just the idea of economy of motion, right?
Yeah.
Every scene needs to be as succinct as possible. So when you have 2 scenes that are essentially the same thing, there's no reason why that can't be cut in half and one scene together, right? I gain nothing from us talking about Lena and then cutting to something else and then seeing Lena, right?
Yeah.
It's all one idea. And that's what really drags the pacing on this episode.
I agree. The pacing was rough. I felt like it went downhill. Overall,
Absolutely.
This was certainly a more boring episode.
Yeah.
And again, it's because things are one-sided and we aren't gaining new information with each scene.
Mm-hmm.
And you either need to gain plot information or character information.
Yeah, well, one of the worst things the show does, in this episode specifically, is we will figure out information in one scene, go to the next scene where 2 people are talking about that information and not saying anything, and then cut back to that scene where the choice is made, right? Like, it is just, it's like you said, repetitive. It is redundant. And I don't like it.
Let's go ahead and talk about Lena and Viserys' walk.
Okay.
That scene. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
One, the actress playing Lena is adorable.
Yes. Very,
perfectly
very cute.
Cutie pie.
Yeah.
Looked so young. So
also,
perfect.
So far, like the wigs in the show.
They've looked so good.
Really good. I found out grown-up Alicent, that's her real hair. I thought that was really cool. Yeah.
Olivia Cook?
Uh-huh. That's her real hair the whole time. But like all the Targaryen wigs, I think they look really nice.
Yeah,
especially when they're all like curly and wavy. It is so fun to look at.
Yeah.
So good job. Props and wigs. Wigs, costumes. But yeah, again, it's another like, it's one of those like, ooh, scenes where it's like, oh, you're going to marry this 12-year-old? And it's like, it's not his fault. So you're not blaming him or anything.
Yeah.
But again, I was like, this would have been really crazy if it happened 20 minutes ago.
Yeah. I also think they do a good job of it feeling like Viserys, because if he doesn't do this, Corlys is going to be mad at him.
Mm-hmm.
And Corlys is a powerful and important person, and he doesn't really want to marry a 12-year-old, but Viserys feels like he has to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was, it makes you continue to like Viserys.
Yeah,
you're not thinking that he wants this, and I think that's good. I think the walk was really cute. I think it wasn't really cute, but like she was really cute.
Yeah.
And I think Viserys being like, is that what your father told you to say?
Yeah.
And then they amped it up a notch when she's like, but my mother said I don't have to bed you till I'm 14. And you're like,
it's good. It's just like a bad situation.
Yeah, your skin crawls.
Yeah.
Yeah, even for Westeros, that's rough. So, and that's kind of it. I feel like it would have been nice if we combine those 2 scenes. Because again, we don't really learn that much in that scene even. We learn that she is as young as they say she is, which isn't really new knowledge.
Yeah. Which again, like I can take that walking scene and put it 2 scenes before and nothing is altered, right? We would still have the same conversations where everybody's like, boy, she's young, you know?
Yeah. Let's keep moving to talking about Viserys and Rhaenyra.
Their dinner scene?
Yeah, so they eat dinner. They're trying to get closer. It's just kind of awkward.
Yeah.
And that's really it in that scene. Again, it didn't go far.
I thought the pacing was slow. And I wrote down, because again, I think the chemistry was not there. Comparing this awkward scene to Viserys and Alicent's awkward scene in the first episode. It was just like, I don't know. And again, they were talking about, Laena's young. Laena's so young. Oh my goodness. You know, it's stuff that we've heard at least once already.
I would say the reason why the scene where Alicent in the first episode comes in to try to comfort Viserys, why that worked, and then an awkward scene where Rhaenyra and Viserys are eating, why that didn't work, is because Alicent is playing a game. She's got two motives. She has a real motive and then her secret motive. Yeah. No, she has her fake motive that she wants everyone to see, and then her secret motive. So we're seeing that as the audience, and we know more than the characters, so now I'm intrigued.
That is good.
In Rhaenyra and Viserys' dinner scene, they just want to reconcile.
That's true. And
they're kind of upset, but about the mom, and she doesn't want to remarry, but everything they know, we know. Yeah. And everything we know, they know.
I will say, at some point she's like, sorry for speaking up in the small council. And he goes, you're young, you'll learn. Which I guess was good. Does solidify that he does see Rhaenyra as like a young girl still. Yeah. But again, didn't need to be that long. Yeah. You know, like again, it's just, it's not economic.
It also didn't tell us anything new because already in the small council meeting, he did cut her off and act like she was, a silly little girl and almost laughed at her. That's so we already knew that. It didn't give us new information. And they had already told us later in the episode they hadn't talked and it was awkward between them. So again, no new information was present. Viserys' health is declining and they're trying to save his finger. And while they're trying to do this, Viserys catches Otto up on his conversation with Corlys and Rhaenys. Yes. Which, okay, let's talk about the health thing isn't in the books.
Oh, really?
I'm pretty sure. Okay. I can look that up. But I'm pretty sure this idea that he has in the trivia, in one of the IMDb trivias, they said they kind of decided it was like a form of leprosy. Okay. Which I think is cool. Yeah. And I think that's a fun addition. It just adds more nuance.
I think it's cool. This isn't really like a narrative thing. I think it's fun to see like methods of treatment in Westeros. Yeah. Like that's fun. And it's again, it's just like adding more. Like this scene is immediately a little more interesting because his hand is in a bucket of maggots, right? Yeah. Like it's just a cool thing. And it's neat. Like it's him sitting down, being treated while Otto stands above him and takes the high ground with deciding what to do, right? Yeah. It's those little things that make a scene more than just two people talking.
Yeah, so that wasn't in the book.
That's cool. How does he die? I'm giving it away. We haven't read this in the book yet.
Yeah, sorry, spoilers.
We started from the beginning.
Sorry, Viserys does die.
And it's a long book.
I think it's kind of the same way.
Okay, just like illness.
He's not gross and decrepit and, you know.
Well, good on them for making him absolutely disgusting.
It also makes, whenever they do that, we can get into this more later, but it changes Alicent's character to me. It does. In a good way, I think. Okay, yeah. So, no, I think you're right. I wish they would have played up Otto being manipulative just a little bit more because whenever Tywin's being manipulating people. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think you have Littlefinger versus Tywin. Okay. Tywin, you know you're being manipulated. And he's so smart and he's so many steps ahead of you. There's just nothing you can do.
Yeah. Right? Well, and then you realize you thought you were being manipulated this way, and then he made you do this other thing.
And he doesn't care that you know who he is. He doesn't care. It doesn't matter to him. He's too powerful.
He wants you to know who he is.
Yes. And so that's exactly. He wants you to be afraid. And so that's a full-fledged character to me. Mm-hmm. Littlefinger wants to pretend that he's not. He's closer to everyone. See what I'm saying? The only person I think that knows who the real Littlefinger is Varys. Okay. Right? And that's why Varys and him don't get along. Uh-huh. Yes. Because Varys wants the good of the realm and Littlefinger wants the good of himself. Yeah. And so I think that is a really fleshed out character and a really fleshed out dynamic between people. Yeah. And I think, can I even call Otto? He's kind of manipulative.
Well, I think that's the biggest thing. Like I wrote this down too. He's playing at being a whisper guy but he just like doesn't have any charisma.
Yeah. What do you mean by whisper guy?
Well, in this scene specifically, like he's out for power and stuff, but he was sort of like doing this, and that. Like he's sort of like
the
setting up
acting.
Schemes.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I don't know, he's just kind of an old guy. Yes,
who wants power, kind of.
Right? And I don't think that's like the actor's fault. I think it's a direction issue because I feel like
writing issue.
Or a writing issue. Yeah. I feel like Otto is. We established his character in the first episode, and I think decently well. Like if I could summarize characters, I feel like Otto would be pretty. Like I know who Otto is.
Yeah.
But then we haven't done anything with that, so he's still this archetype, stereotype kind of like I want all the power guy, but he doesn't act in fun ways, right?
I think what would have been cool is if you could have made him just ruthless.
Yes.
So when we get that, the like tiniest bit of that when he tells Alicent to wear her mother's dress in episode 1.
Yes.
I think this idea of just being ruthless and sort of sacrificing anything and having no sentimental value, I think could have been really fun. It's the lack of layers to the character. He's only playing one thing. Playing like 7 things.
And I think that idea of his like politically, mentally ruthless would contrast very nicely with Daemon's physical ruthlessness.
And Viserys' just lack of ruthlessness, right?
Yeah.
Like that's not how Viserys is at all.
Exactly.
Viserys is just a genuine person.
So your two bads are both like vying in their own way for things in very different ways, which keeps it interesting.
And because they hate each other so much, if it was just the two ends of the spectrum.
And they can't play each other's games, which is really fun.
And they also pretty much want the same thing.
Yeah.
And that's really why they don't get along. I think that would have been so fun. And I just missed that.
That's your Varys Littlefinger relationship.
Yes.
They're both so similar, but that's what makes them so different. Yeah. It's very missed opportunity.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. So we just kind of had that scene and Otto seems to be.
Yeah. Well, they did talk about how young Lena is.
Of course they did.
You cannot forget.
And Otto seems to be pushing Viserys to remarry.
Yes.
Even though we are, I don't know, as a watcher, as an audience member, do you feel like, because I obviously know what happens, do you feel like you understand that Otto is trying to get Alicent to marry Viserys?
I think that's
so.
Clear. I remember on the first watch, I was like, okay, yeah, that's a plan.
Okay. Rhaenys and Rhaenyra.
Yes.
So we have the scene where Viserys is taking a walk with Lena. And Rhaenyra's watching. Yep. She's watching that scene. Rhaenys is watching Rhaenyra, which I do like that little layer to the scene. It's cool. Again, I think it would have been more impactful if it would have just been the one scene. And then Rhaenys kind of has a conversation with Rhaenyra and she basically tells her exactly what's going on. I think it's pretty clear at this point, no one wants Rhaenyra to be queen.
Yeah.
Viserys, yes, but he's not making any sort of actions to help her be queen.
For sure. And
hold on to that. And I think that probably comes from his bias and him being naive and focused on something else. And so,
yeah, I mean, if anybody gets a pass, it's going to be him, right? Yeah. He's obviously still grieving.
Dead wife, right?
You know?
That'll do it.
He doesn't think in that way. Like he doesn't think everybody's out to get him, which is again, like a fun addition that we don't have. Like in Game of Thrones, everybody is out to get everybody. And it's fun that, the king here is just like, yeah, my council is here for me. It's awesome. You know?
I think where that starts though is when Viserys was given the throne, he didn't have to be cunning or manipulative. He didn't even want it. Really, right. It was handed to him.
Which I think is a good, in that prologue, I think the actor does a really good job of like, okay.
I know,
it's
he's
very,
so cute.
It's very cute. But yeah, it's good to see this pillar of, gullibility, easy malleable, for all these other people to sort of like mold to them. It's very cool.
And Rhaenys basically tells Rhaenyra in this scene, they didn't let me be queen, so why are they going to let you be queen? They had their chance to put a woman on the throne. The precedent is set. It's not going to happen. And Rhaenyra doesn't necessarily believe her. Now, this scene to me was okay. Again, Rhaenys just calls it how it is, right? She just kind of says what's going on. Yeah. And I think that just it lacked depth to me because of it.
I agree. I remember it being a lot more impactful the first time around.
Maybe that's
it's good to reintroduce the theme, but it's sort of just does that.
And maybe it was better the first time around because we don't know the outcome.
Yeah. I also wish it would have solidified their relationship a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because it's knowing what happens in the future. I need them to sort of maybe not like each other, but respect each other in a way. Yeah. And I don't think that read super well.
Yeah. Yeah. And
like Rhaenys just sort of came off a little bitter, which especially as we've seen her, I just don't think that's a little too dimensional for her, you know?
And in a show about women and the patriarchy and how men don't respect women, basically, and how men pit women against each other, I feel like we either needed to make that clear in this scene that the patriarchy is creating this divide between these two powerful, strong women, or Rhaenys could have basically been like, look, I'm on your side. Mm-hmm. And it basically brought that up.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe not knowing the outcome made that scene stronger because the audience wants Rhaenyra on the throne. Yeah. I would assume
at
most
this
audience
point,
members do.
I would hope.
And so, yeah, it's Rhaenyra or Daemon who, and so I think maybe not knowing the outcome made that scene stronger.
Yeah.
But then we get Viserys and Alicent eating and discussing what the small council wants to do. Alicent gives him the present of the mended dragon, which I thought was really cute. He accidentally broke it in the first scene and then she had it mended. That was really sweet. And then this is another scene where it's like a short scene, people talking, and then someone comes in and says, hey, something happened. That happened like 4 times in this episode. And it was a small council meeting.
It was a small council. I will say I wrote down this small council meeting actually was exciting.
It was. Why? Because we have new information, and new information is exciting.
We have new information. It was quick paced, and the information was delivered in a succession that was very fun to listen to. Yes. Right? It's Daemon did this thing. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, he took an egg. Yeah. Oh my gosh, he took the egg. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? We should go get dragon. You know, like. And
again, I think anytime you give a scene a point of view, it's going to make it stronger. And this scene felt like it was from Rhaenyra's point of view.
Yeah.
And I loved that. So we find out that Daemon stole an egg and he's going to marry his second wife, who is pregnant, Lady Mysaria. And I really liked how they did this where Rhaenyra in High Valyrian, right? Doesn't she do it in High Valyrian?
Yes.
She says, what egg?
Which egg, yeah.
And they're like, oh,
which small note, I still don't know if they've named Mysaria yet. I think that's later. You don't think they have? I think it's later in this episode. But we can talk about it later.
Okay. So basically, I think the letter was fun. It was fun to see that Daemon, he was referencing the old ways of taking more than one wife and saying that like he basically gets to do this.
Again, like a slap in the face of his brother, the king.
Yeah.
Right. Just flexing his ability to not follow authority.
Yeah.
So he has not changed a lot in 6 months.
And then Otto plans to go see Daemon at Dragonstone with Kristen Cole to get the egg back because it's very important that they have
I said this right after that scene. I said too many scenes don't have enough in them. The council scene was good, right? Yeah. Everybody started somewhere, they ended somewhere else. The scene where Otto just leaves was unnecessary.
What do you mean?
He says, I'll go. And then we should have cut to Dragonstone instead of cutting to him getting ready and talking with Alicent a little and then talking with Kristen. And it doesn't really matter.
You're right. I didn't even write anything down. There was no.
Yeah. He may have talked to us. I didn't write anything about the scene. I just said I didn't want it there.
But then we have him sailing. I thought the shot of him sailing was fun and seeing the waves and the ship. We love a good establishing shot in Game of Thrones. You gotta have those. Again, I wish the reason Dragonstone is important was clearer here.
Yeah.
Because it's a huge deal that Daemon is. That is
for sure.
Absolute slap in the face.
Yeah, especially not even reading this section, but going into the books, like it is such a big deal. And it's so cool because you know Dragonstone is a place in Game of Thrones, but it has so much more like familial meaning now. And that's something that they really should have explored more.
Yeah, especially because When we're in Game of Thrones, sorry to bring it back to Game of Thrones, and Stannis is at Dragonstone, which Stannis considers himself the true heir.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool that he's at Dragonstone.
Yeah.
And we don't need that information, though.
No.
We don't need it.
No,
it's
the only thing we learn is it has a big old table.
And it's kind of fun that he's at Dragonstone.
It's kind of fun,
That's really all we need, because there's so many other layers and nuances to it. In this series, where it is all about the Targaryens, their legacy, their dynasty, their bloodlines, their history. Yeah, we kind of need to know the history of here. Yeah. I think it's important enough and warranted. And you could do it with literally 2 lines.
Well, I think that's the thing. I think they say it and it's supposed to have weight to it, but nobody reacts in a way that like this, like if he would have taken over Harrenhal, it would have had the same reaction. Yeah. Oh, Daemon, you know?
Yeah. Well, we've got to get this back. Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, we're at Dragonstone. I also wrote very cool establishing shot.
I loved that they were on this bridge type.
Yes, the bridge. Oh, yes, that big
stone.
It was very cool.
Was really
that
cool.
Profile shots, like the sun behind the clouds and stuff. It was very pretty. I
feel like this is a good example of how things are different. This bridge clearly feels it's in the sky, it's in the air. It feels very like a world with dragons here, you know? And I want more of that.
It's cool. I thought this scene started strong, actually. I said the dialogue was good. I don't think it was great, but I think it was good. I really liked the dragons.
I just wish...
is it Cyrax? Cyrax crawling over? Like, immediately your stakes are raised. Because that's the first time we've seen dragons in the sense of, like, using them militaristically, you know?
Yeah.
And it's funny because all the warriors who are with Otto are just like, oh shit, he has a dragon, I forgot, you know? And I thought that was really cool.
It's Cyraxes, I
think. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought that was cool because it's like there's no crazy show of violence, but the tension is very high, right? Even like not seeing what a dragon can do yet, like you can imagine what would happen if this dragon just went off on these people, right? So I think that contrasts to the scene in the first episode where a bunch of guards just beat the shit out of everybody.
Yeah.
This is so much more effective in actually raising stakes and tension, you know?
Yeah.
And from there, it just goes downhill.
Oh, you think so? When Rhaenyra shows up?
I love Rhaenyra showing up. I think that's a great idea. I think the other dragon is good. I think their face-off is a cool idea.
Oh, okay.
And then it just sort of...
fizzled out.
Exactly. And Daemon, like, I wrote down it almost feels like Daemon got bored. Because, she comes up and she's like, you're going to have to kill me. And he, like, doesn't really respond. He doesn't really make any faces. He just sort of leaves. Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of think the effects looked bad with the dragon when Rhaenyra rolled up. Am I wrong? Do you disagree?
I didn't write anything down, but I don't doubt you.
Okay.
I think anytime, like, there are some shots that look very nice.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just think it's really hard to get these dragons to look, especially when people are on them. I feel like it is rough.
But apparently they like revamped what they do in season 2, which is cool. I'm excited to see more of that.
That's good.
So, and I think the dragons, like Daemon's dragon feels colorful here, and I like that.
Yes. Yeah, I got that.
I really want to be able to distinguish these dragons. I want to feel, the way we had the direwolves with the Starks and how you knew their names, you knew how important they were and how much we loved them. I want to feel that way with the dragons, and I don't feel that way right now. I can barely remember their names, and I think that's a problem.
Even because like the dragons take on like personality traits, right? Like they like if you're like married to somebody with a dragon, like they fall in love and stuff.
Yes,
so like
and that happens.
These dragons can really like be characters. Which again, when everybody's named Rhaenyra, Rhaenys, you know, it's like that's a really good way, a good visual way to show their difference. Like, oh, I may not know her name, but I know girl with the pink dragon who likes to fly in circles is here, you know?
Yeah, like, exactly. So I do think the idea of Rhaenyra showing up and like saving the day was really fun. I liked her getting up the dragon and facing off with Daemon and talking in High Valyrian and then being the one to convince him. Otto was not having it. He did not like that. Again, because he can't control her and because it's Otto. He wants to be the one to do it.
Yeah. Like I said, I think all the ideas of the scene were there. I just think it was a pacing issue again.
I think the dialogue.
The dialogue and just like there were pauses and she walks up and says a thing and it should be over, but it's not over. And then he like stands there for a second. Then he turns around and throws and it's just like You know, the cutting room floor could have made that scene work.
Well, so I think when you look at like a really strong scene from Game of Thrones, and you could ask, what do I want from that scene? What does this character want from that scene? And I'd be able to answer. So, like, what's an example?
Of like two people meeting?
Yeah, in Game of Thrones. Like, okay, I've got one. We have the scene between, and it's a power struggle. That's what it is. Power struggle. That's what we're missing. And I want to feel the power struggle. So one of the scenes, and I think the second episode of Game of Thrones, this is one of my all-time favorite scenes of Game of Thrones, where Ned walks in to the throne room and Jaime is sitting right by the throne. And then they have this intense conversation, which is just a conversation of wit about basically they're one-upping each other. And basically we get this idea that they don't like each other. They don't trust each other. There's an intense history between them. And just fundamentally, these two people at their core are so opposite, they will never get along. We get all that. And I could tell you what they want from each other. Yeah. Right. And
they don't say it.
They never say those words. Right. And it's a power struggle. And this is such a good scene.
Wow.
It's the scene where,
what does he say? You must pick your opponents wisely.
He says, Ned says basically, your armor looks so clean. Oh. And Jaime says, yeah, like basically no one can hit me. It's all so much better when really they say it. He's like, no one can hit me, right? Is basically what he says. And he says, you choose your opponents wisely, don't you? It's so good. And before that, they're talking about how it's like, Jaime walks in and is like, oh, what's the saying? The king shits and the hand wipes or whatever.
That's right.
And then,
oh my gosh,
it's so good. And you just know, oh, this is going to be a problem. So I wish, here's what I think would have worked with Daemon and Rhaenyra. Add the layer of, they like the power struggle. Yeah. It feels good for them. They enjoy that. There's already sexual tension between them, so let's play into that.
I agree.
Right? Clearly that's what's happening. That's what happened in the first scene. Y'all set it up in episode 1. So continue that here. They like this idea of who's in, because it's probably all Rhaenyra's life been Daemon. Daemon's always had more power than her and everything. Now Rhaenyra's the heir. Right now, Rhaenyra's got all these people backing her up, and we could have really felt it could have gone two ways. Either Daemon could have really liked it, and they could have kept this power struggle going, or we see it really hurt Daemon. That this is not the Rhaenyra he knew. That this is not that she is growing up. And see what I mean? We could have gone one of two ways.
I think you cracked it. That's really good.
And added this power struggle between them. And just give it a point of view. Do we like it? Do we not like the power struggle? Because we know later, spoilers for later in the season, I think, or it might even be season 2. I think it's later in this season. Where basically she's like, you have never respected me as heir. You've never respected me as queen. And Daemon, I mean, it's pretty true. He wanted to be heir. Yeah. And I think they tried to hint at that with the dialogue of her being like, well, here I am, kill me and you could be heir. And I just don't think it was as effective because, again, it's exactly what they meant.
Yeah. And they say it exactly how they mean it.
Yes. And if there would have been an added layer to it, like I had said, I think that would have...
this like sexual tension between them. Their dragons could get riled up. Like the soldiers around them could be freaking out because they're like getting so hot for each other, you know?
Or it's just like we know that there's tension and they talk about how smart the dragons are and how dragons are smarter than people even. And maybe the dragons are getting just riled up, like you said, just because they feel that there's either going to be a fight or going to be, right, something's going to happen. It's the...
That's good.
It's the... I say like fist or fuck is what I say. Yeah. But it's the like kiss or kill.
Exactly.
And it's this idea of, oh, are they going to kiss or are they going to kill each other? Are they going to kiss or are they going to kill each other? And that would have... that scene would have hit if that's what they went with.
I think you cracked it. That's good.
Yeah. But Rhaenyra saves the day. She gets the egg. We find out that Daemon was straight up lying, which I thought that was fun.
Yeah, that was fun.
She's not pregnant. They're not getting married. And
which if Daemon lies, cool. I like that.
Yeah.
And he plays it off. He's like, eventually. Like, that was funny. I like that.
And it just, you kind of get this when he goes back inside and we have Rhaenyra, or not Rhaenyra, his Lady Missaria.
Who, by the way, I wrote this down.
Okay.
This is the 3rd time that we've seen her in this series, right? The first time in the brothel, 2nd time leaving
I think we saw her twice in the brothel, actually.
Okay, so this is the fourth time then. So twice in the brothel, once leaving to eventually come to Dragonstone. And then right now, Dragonstone, they have not said her name until right now.
Wow.
Which, again, I don't think in itself is a terrible thing, right? But she's clearly being set up as a big character. And we see her exposition dump again, right? She's mad at Daemon. I quoted this, I came to be liberated from fear, right?
Which I actually liked that line.
I like it, but it's very, again, this cutout character, I came from far away to be safe and I chose you. Because I literally didn't know her name until right now, right?
That's also in a show about women.
A show about women where you've seen this woman multiple times and I don't even know her name yet.
He's taken her from her home and... Right? Like,
and again, maybe in the books, I'm sure he met with a whore, Millicent, but that's not what the show did, right? Like, I watched the show before I read the book, so I barely remember who this person was.
She comes up in season 2, and when we watched the first episode again, I went, wait a minute. She was in season 1.
Yeah.
So I don't think they made that clear. I do wish their scene. Okay. Ooh, here we go. So if the scene between Rhaenyra and Daemon had weird sexual undertones, then the scene between Mysaria and Daemon next, she's real mad about that. I'd be real mad about it if I saw a sexual tension between him and someone else when I left.
Pushing it even farther, maybe they do have a lot of tension between them, and then she is just upset that she truly isn't safe, right? And then he's like, what, don't you love me? And she's like, no, I'm here for safety, right? Like, whatever way you're gonna go with the character, give her a character.
We just need more layers. And she needs, I'm gonna say it, I don't like her accent.
It was strange.
It was hard to understand.
We had subtitles on, thank the seven-faced god.
It was really hard to understand her.
Yeah, it was very strange.
So that plus just basically not giving her much of a character was hard.
And yeah, especially again, like knowing that she plays a big role. She doesn't necessarily need to be one of the most fleshed out characters, but it is mind-boggling to me that I'm just now finding out her name, right?
Well, I think when you look at smaller characters in any political drama, or when we're looking at something like Game of Thrones, like think about like Hot Pie, right? Or like Gendry. These characters that we don't get to know them very personally, but we understand what they're about.
Yeah.
And it's show don't tell. They show don't tell a lot with those characters.
Yeah. It's not a whole lot of information, but I do feel like I know these people.
But she just kind of tells me that she is.
And again, in the most basic, I came to be away from fear. Like, okay,
just not enough.
Would you care to elaborate, or
In a show about women, you have to give me more than a one-dimensional character, right? I don't know. So then we get back to the small council. No, we have a scene between Viserys and the other guy from the small council.
A guy on the small council.
I'm gonna look up his name because I didn't know.
I think we both recognized he was on the council.
I knew he was on the council.
But
I don't know what he does.
I could not tell you what his name is or what he does.
Okay, so it's Lord Lionel Strong, who is Master of Laws.
Right.
And so Viserys is talking to him, and basically we're talking about the same thing again. Should he marry Laena? Because if he marries Laena, one, she's Valyrian, so from House Valyrian. And that would unite the two strong houses from Old Valyria.
Yeah, good militaristic ties, being like the boat guy, you'd have a great fleet.
Rhaenys, who was looked over for queen, it would kind of soothe that wound, right? She would be...
Which is just all the stuff we already know.
I fully agree. And he gives her guidance, and he gives Viserys guidance and says, you should probably marry Laena. It would be best for you. And that's really all the scene is.
I guess maybe they're really setting up to be like, whoa, he chose Alicent?
Yeah.
But is it not obvious? Do we need a third scene where somebody's like, she's young, but you should do it?
Yeah.
You know?
So then after that scene, Rhaenyra's returned from Dragonstone, and Viserys is pretty mad that she went. And they kind of reconcile, and they talk about Emma, and they talk about basically Viserys, it's his responsibility to remarry. And as the king, that's what he needs to do.
Yeah, I thought this did a good job of the dialogue, showing that the characters are thinking on multiple levels, right? Like what is expected of me versus what do I want and what'll make me happy.
And Alicent got through. Whether that was good or bad, right? Whether she felt genuine in what she was doing or not, it worked.
Yeah, they talked. I do think the dialogue was good in the sense that like it moved the plot along. I think the music again was doing just a little too much. I feel like they're relying a lot on music to supply emotion.
Okay.
Because it was something like that is expected of you, and it's just this da da da, and I'm like, okay, guys, you know?
Yeah.
Ooh, this is a big thing that I wrote down. So we go directly from this scene, right? Where they're like consoling. They realize like I have to marry somebody else, right? And we cut to another small council meeting, right? Where he's like picking the heir. And I wrote down good transitions are missing from the show.
Oh, wait, that's such a good point.
Because in Game of Thrones, anytime they could do a creative cut from one character to another, especially when they are being compared to or compared against or talking about that character, they would always do that, right? So many times would somebody say, you're not a real conqueror, cut to Dany. Right?
Oh, it's so good.
So many times. And in this scene, if they're trying to keep it a surprise, I get it, but I don't think it's a surprise at all. When they say, I need to take a wife, they cut to Viserys like looking sick. You need to cut to Alicent in this scene.
Yeah.
Like she's in the court, like she's in the room for one of the only times she's ever in like the council meeting room, right? You need to cut to her because they literally say, I need to pick a wife. Who's it going to be? Boom, cut to her. Like that's a easy Game of Thrones transition that I was like, why didn't you do this?
And so, okay, so I think part of the reason House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones are inherently such different stories for a lot of reasons. House of the Dragon is so contained. Mm-hmm. It is so contained. Game of Thrones is the entire Westeros Essos. It's just everything. Yeah. We're moving. Someone is always traveling and going somewhere else. Yes. There's information is always being passed. So many moving parts, which is why the theme in Game of Thrones was so perfect, right? It's all these moving parts. Mm-hmm. In House of the Dragon, it's so much simpler. And that's okay. I don't think that's not a bad thing. It just means it's a different story. And so I really wish House of the Dragon would have just said, we're not Game of Thrones. Let's not pretend we are. And with doing that, I think they needed to make their characters come to life.
I agree. I wrote this down earlier.
And I think the transitions, yes, I know I just said that they're not Game of Thrones, but I just think the creative transitions would have added more nuance. And again, perspective.
Yeah. And it's another opportunity to showcase a character's thoughts, feelings without spending actual time talking about it.
And
right?
it's more engaging. Yeah. When you have so many, because a lot is still going on. There's a lot of things happening. And when you have creative transitions, even if your pacing isn't as strong, which I do think they struggle with slow pacing, creative transitions keeps the story moving. It feels like there's energy behind it. And I think that would just be so, I think that is such a good point, Alex.
Here's what I wrote. Game of Thrones is always about 14 people at once. When it's just about a few characters, things get repetitive and boring.
Yes.
And yeah, especially we are not changing locations a lot. We went to Dragonstone. That was awesome.
Yeah, it was.
But we followed people we've been following the whole time, which, you know, you don't want like 30 characters or anything, but just any chance to vary it up is going to work in your favor when it's this dense of a show, especially like even showing things that are happening to our main cast from others' perspectives, right? Yeah. Like I really was hoping that this show would dive into what the common, like what is Flea Bottom like with the Targaryen rule, right? It's been a peaceful time. Game of Thrones, constant war, right? Everybody's always suffering. So like, what does this look like right now on the brink of that war in the city, right? Yeah. I thought that was a really cool perspective.
Something that Game of Thrones did really well is we know how each person in King's Landing felt about the small folk. We know Cersei did not give a shit about the small folk. We know Marjorie used them for political game, right? We know those things. We know Tyrion did care.
He did, yeah.
Right? We know Varys cares. And we get this really strong understanding, and none of that matters in House of the Dragon. They don't care at all. Nobody cares. Nobody brings it up. Yeah. Actually, it's not that they don't care. We just don't know. We don't know what's important to these people. What do they value? Show me how this world is different. That's why I'm watching it.
Yeah. Well, show me, like, everybody says Varys is like loved, right? And I believe that. Or Viserys, sorry. Viserys.
Yeah.
But, you know, he's like, have him go places.
Do you know how cool a shot from a little orphan boy in King's Landing seeing a dragon fly above head would have been? Do you know how cool that would be?
Or like make it a character. Like maybe Viserys loves to walk around and like hear the bards on the street. And as he gets more sick, he can't do that. So he gets even sadder, right? So he confines himself and maybe gets even more crazy about this prophecy because all he can do is play with this model of old Valyria, right?
And I know that that's different from the books, but they're already making so many changes.
Yeah.
Right? Just go all in then and make more changes. But then we get to this small council meeting and Viserys has decided to take a new wife and it is Alicent Hightower. Corlys is, I put mad, and Rhaenyra
How many A's on that mad?
Quite a few A's on that mad. And Rhaenyra is really upset as well. I'm sure they both felt very surprised, which, okay, I know it's a TV and it's dramatized, but I just felt it was funny that he was like, everyone gather around to the small council meeting.
Yeah.
I'm not going to pick who any of y'all told me to pick.
Yes.
I just think I hate when it's are so obvious in a show and they didn't do it. If we just came from his conversation with Rhaenyra.
Well, here's the thing. All through this episode, I've been saying it's so obvious he's going to marry Alicent, right? Which I do stand by. But I also wrote marrying Alicent was not set up enough.
I agree, actually.
And here's what really got me. The scene right before this where they're talking. He specifically says, like, it's my duty. I need to marry. No one can replace your mother. No one can replace your mother. I'm marrying for the good of the realm, but I'm going to pick the girl I like.
Yeah.
You know?
The girl I can have sex with now.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So...
Which I could believe. I could definitely believe he like actually does like swoon for Alicent, but I don't think
they didn't show us.
Yeah, I don't think enough of those scenes are in where she mends the dragon form. Beautiful, gorgeous. Give me like one more scene of that. Or one more scene and I'm sold.
Or if it's like a little cliche, but I still think it would have worked if this idea that he's got this big problem and who do I want to go talk to about this big problem? Who do I want to go talk to? Alicent. Alicent, what do I do? Console me, Alicent. Right.
Exactly.
I just think you got to show us that he wants to spend his life with her so much he's going to do the really bad political move.
Yeah.
Really bad political move.
You know,
that everyone on the small council told him was a bad move.
And again, it's like the pieces are there. I obviously see where they're going. It's not established enough.
I also think I love creative cinematography that can tell the story when the show's on mute. So I think if we could have had some really cool shots of like Alicent with the sunset behind her and him seeing her and tell me that he loves her. It doesn't even have to be love, just that he really likes her and cares about her.
Yeah. Or, you know, better yet, in the scene where him in like maybe he spends more time with Laena, right? Maybe you make the two scenes that one scene, then you have a whole other Laena scene, right?
Yeah.
Maybe he's trying to explain something and she's a child, you know?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, you know, when I talk to Alicent, she really likes this. You know? Something like just
or back to what we said when we were talking about episode 1 about how we felt that they amped up Viserys being kind of obsessed with this Targaryen prophecy and legacy. They could have done that in this episode where Alicent really hyped up that side of him and believed in him like no one else did and believed in this prophecy and believed, I mean, he can't tell her about the prophecy for obvious reasons going forward, but believed in this Targaryen dynasty and legacy.
Yeah.
I think could have been just another way to do that. There's an infinite amount of ways to show that they were close besides her giving him a toy that broke. That's just so small. That's not enough. And we needed a moment of like where they touch hands and like make eye contact or something like that.
Yeah.
Or if it's going to be a shock, if it's supposed to be an actual shock, it needs to be an actual shock.
Yeah. You're trying to do two different things and they're not working. Very obvious choice to marry Alicent. I think everybody saw that coming, but the way you use that is still to creatively, like you want everyone to be like, oh, is he actually going to not go through with it? Oh, okay, he did. You know?
What maybe could have been cool is we need a reason why he didn't pull Rhaenyra aside and say, hey, I'm going to let you know.
Yeah.
I'm going to marry your best friend. Right? He knows that they know. He knows that he's not a kid. He knows that's weird. So same with Corlys. That is terrible for him to, at the small council meeting, say it. And he's got to know that he's not an idiot. Yes, he's naive, but he's not stupid. He's got to know that it's a bad thing. So maybe what could have been cool is it's played up like, yeah, I'm going to choose Lena. And we could have a scene with him, with Alicent basically saying maybe something like, our time has to end.
Yeah.
And I'm so sad about it. And then
she does that final, like, that meeting's what sways it.
Or they have the small council meeting, he's about to say, and Alicent walks in, and it's like the music cuts out, and he's like, I can't do it, right?
Yeah.
He makes the decision right there and tells them. And now we have stakes, tension.
Again, and that's character driven, whereas what happened was event driven. Like the council met and he said he would marry Alicent, and that's literally what happened. And
if now that fixes the idea that he knew all along and was stupid and didn't tell them.
Because like, don't get me wrong, I love our good king. But like, he's a weak, corruptible guy. Like, if he
he's easy to manipulate.
If he really likes his girl, I fully believe he would absolutely fuck up his political reign to do this. But it's not shown in a way that is fun or nuanced. You know,
he's not stupid.
Yeah,
and this painted him as stupid, and I just think that's boring. That's boring to have a stupid king when we know he's not.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
They're mad, and then we get to the final scene of the episode. Corlys is monologuing to Daemon to let him know that he wants to team up and take care of the Stepstones together. I do like how they had him monologuing. In my head, reveal. I literally said, like, you sly dog. You got me monologuing. He's like, it's like dark lighting and like evil. I thought it was fun. And they're panning over.
The scene looked well. I thought, I didn't like the dialogue so much. I thought it was pretty cheesy.
I didn't mind. I'd rather be cheesy and be entertained.
Okay, I guess. If you're going to like mustache twirl, because what was it? He was like, it was never my brother's strong suit. Yeah. And he's like, what? He said, being king. And I was like, okay.
I didn't mind it because it gave it a point of view, and that's more than just saying words.
Yeah, but again, if you would have taken that all the way from the beginning, I would have been fully on board, right? Agreed. But I don't know Daemon is just like sort of witty. He said some like funny back and forth with Otto at Dragonstone, but I'm like, no, Daemon's the guy who cuts your hand off because he's bored.
Why isn't Daemon funny though? Why didn't y'all I hate to bring it back to Vampire Diaries, except I don't hate to bring it back to Vampire Diaries at all. But Daemon from Vampire Diaries.
Yeah. Who I assume this Daemon is named after.
Obviously. Daemon Salvatore, he's like this exact same character. Yeah. Right? It's the same character. Mm-hmm. And he's funny.
Honestly, this is the blueprint for like your villain who you want to root for.
Who's redeemable and has a redemption.
Super hot.
Yes, like bad boy.
I get it. That's how he should have been written.
Why didn't they make him funny? Why didn't they make Daemon funny? I just think you missed so much potential with bringing... Yeah. Why does Viserys like Daemon? Mm-hmm. Right?
For sure.
I mean, I feel like it is so relatable to think about, man, I have a little brother that just like fucks up all the time. That's easy for people to get on board with. Yeah. And I think for them to such a missed opportunity. It's also Matt Smith. Yeah. Like Matt Smith can be funny.
Another like dynamic I was thinking about as Viserys and Daemon is like almost like Mufasa and Scar.
Okay.
You know, like this sort of like king who's not really about, he's just like, I am noble and I'm leading this. And then Scar's like walking around. He's always got something to say. He's very charismatic. Like that's what I'm missing, you know? Yes.
That's so true, actually. I agree. So I don't know. I liked the fun reveal that he's with Daemon and that they're going to team up. I think that's a fun way to end the episode. I just think overall this episode was a little boring. The pacing was rough.
I think and I have a theory on why the pacing is suffering. Why? And I alluded to this earlier when we said time has passed between certain characters. I think when a character is not on screen, their story effectively stops, which is something that Game of Thrones never did, right? If we were on somebody's perspective for a while and cut off for a while and came back, they were never in the same spot, right? They traveled somewhere. They did something and we heard about it in a creative way.
That's a good point.
And one of the worst instances of this was The very beginning, when they were like, Rhaenyra, we're having a meeting. You need to go pick the King's Guard, right?
Yeah.
And we have the scene where Rhaenyra and Alicent are talking, and she specifically says, I know how those men plot and scheme without me when I'm not there, right? So when she goes directly from that meeting to talk to the King's Guard, why the fuck is Otto with her? Did they not continue the meeting? No,
literally
because the meeting stopped. It vanished out of existence because it's not on camera, right?
Right.
Like, literally nothing happens if it's not on screen, which makes everything so slow. Like, what is the whole Lena arc? They're standing by the bushes and they're like, you should marry Lena. And then we cut to a scene and then we cut back and they're in the same fucking spot. They're just waiting for the camera to roll so they can walk along the thing. And I think that is one of the biggest issues with specifically this episode and the series as a whole, right?
That is a really good point. I fully agree.
You know, and we get the odd small council meeting that where they say, oh, the Crab King is advancing, right?
Yeah.
But I'm more than likely sleeping through those anyway, so I don't know what's happening, right? I wrote this down too. I was like, would it be crazy to have more scenes like the opening where it's from the Crab King's perspective? Like, we don't even need to know him as a character, but like, instead of being like, oh, he's advanced, like, let me see it. Let me get a cool perspective that's nowhere near where we are in the Red Keep right now, right?
Well, you also see, I think it's fun that Corlys is the only person that cares about it. I think that's really fun because basically everyone in this room is pretty selfish. And they're way more worried. Otto should probably be talking to Viserys and telling him, hey, advising him, this is probably going to be a problem. Let's take care of it. And he's not doing that because he doesn't care about that. Yeah. So I don't know. I think you make a good point.
And again, it's like if Tywin were there, he'd be like, oh, we're taking care of it, but it's my way. I'm going to send a letter and they're going to stop because I own them, you know, or something like that. We're all, he's literally just like, have you picked you're going to marry?
Yeah. Did you talk? Did Alicent
We're on the brink of war. Did Alicent wear her mother's dress?
Dang it, I was going to say that.
So I don't know. That's the biggest thing to me. Like, it genuinely feels like the whole earth stops turning when it's not on camera.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I said that rarely is someone playing at something else. And the only people that are doing that are Alicent and Otto, and they're only kind of doing it. Yeah. It doesn't feel like anyone wants something from the person they're talking to. I said it feels like everything is both too subtle and not obvious enough. Like, an example I talked about was when we find out that he's marrying Alicent, we never once cut to Rhaenys. We never once figure out how Rhaenys feels. Yeah. Because now this is like the third time she's been snubbed. Yeah. And they don't care. And I think that goes back to this idea of the camera cuts off. When the camera cuts off, the story's gone.
And we cut to Corlys leaving the throne. So we know how the man feels.
Exactly. So again, you either need to say that somewhere in the conversation or make it clear you're doing that on purpose.
Yeah. And we even have the scene earlier where Rhaenys and Rhaenyra are talking. And she says, like, even if it's not my daughter, he's going to marry somebody, right? But you can't convince me for a second that she's not mad, you know?
Yeah. Anything else you want to say? I have some Easter eggs.
I have, overall, I just said I was bored. Too much talking. The pacing was off. I said my economy of motion thing. I do want to share in the after episode. Yeah. This is the first instance I quoted them where they talk about this episode had all the dominoes falling in place. Yeah. Which on our last viewing, when it came out, we watched it week by week. This is something they love to say to justify their time jumps in the series, which, again, you are dealing with a lot of time jumps. You have to deal with those. But you're effectively just making every episode mean less because they're all prologues, you know? So we have a prologue in the first scene of the first episode. The first episode takes place. Then it's 6 months after. And then we're going to get another time jump soon. And it's just like, when does this story start? And I understand that everything we've seen, like, at least to some extent, is necessary. Like, we're setting the world. But, you know, in 10 episodes of a season, was this the best use of all that time?
Yeah, I think something that they could have played up with that in tying the time jumps to the story is the idea of later on in season 2, we get this idea of when did this actually start? Who started this war? Who started this conflict? And I even wrote this down after the first episode where Otto pushed Alicent to go get close to King Viserys. And I was like, do we consider Otto the reason for the war then? Would we put Otto as the blame? And I think if we would have tied in this idea, I'm not sure how to do that, but this idea of we can't even remember where it started. Where was it? So many things happened. So many small things that led to this. Avoidable things that led to this huge war that literally, spoiler alert if you don't know, comes to the end of the Targaryen reign and the dragons. I just think, I mean, it's a civil war. So I think they could have used that maybe to make the time jumps feel merited and thematically relevant, because we stop having time jumps at a certain point. So they weren't important to the theme. And if time was important to the theme, maybe I'd feel more the story had to do with timing.
Yeah. And again, I mean, that sounds like a tough task, because I do think a lot of them being younger, especially aging down Alicent, like seeing them as younger characters, I think is necessary. But I just think as we get farther along, as more jumps happen, it gets messier and messier.
It does.
But that's all I have for this episode.
Okay. So a couple Easter eggs.
Okay.
Viserys talks about being Balerion's last rider. We talked about who Balerion was last episode and how he's super important. I think that was really fun.
Which is very cute to me. That
it
this
is really cute
old
to me.
man, like just happy-go-lucky, is riding literally the scariest thing that's ever existed.
And he tells Lena this, he'd rather face the Black Dread himself than the daughter of 15.
Yeah,
I thought that was just cute. Like,
no,
it's
a good line.
Who is Balerion. I just think that's fun.
It's fun. Like, that's missing from this show so far. Like, it's taking itself very seriously. And not that it can't be serious, but in real life, there's so much comedy, you know?
I think comedy and any sort of intense feeling go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Sadness, loss of someone, comedy goes hand in hand with that. And I think we are really missing it.
And it's such an easy way to get so far with your characters, right? You can make a character likable. You can make them not likable. You can give them character with how they tell their jokes.
Does Alicent bring joy back into Viserys' life? Is she funny? Does she make him laugh? Right? Could that be what it is? No, obviously that's not what happens. But like, could that be a reason why he loves her? Because Emma is dead, his heir is dead, right? You see what I'm saying? I think maybe that could have been a good idea to bring some sort of like lightness and humor.
Or like, I don't know, every time Rhaenyra and Daemon interact with each other, right? It's a power struggle, but like they never really look like they're having fun, or if they're not having, you know, like you said, if they enjoy that struggle, like let me see them enjoy the struggle.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, I have a quote to end on.
Yeah.
Rhaenys said this to Rhaenyra. She said, "Men would rather see the realm put to the torch than see a woman ascend the Iron Throne." Thought that was interesting. Whether or not that's actually true, I mean, I kind of think it is, but I think it's different for each man in the show. Rhaenys fully believes that.
That's a solid quote. And that's like a solid, obvious line that fits well in the world. Like, it's not like, okay, it's good. It's strong. It's coming from a character who I know is strong. Like, it's good.
Well, she's scarred. She's been scorned. And she is sort of the wise one. Rhaenyra's looking at her future when she looks at Rhaenys. See what I'm saying? She might not realize it yet. Rhaenys sure does, though.
Yeah.
Rhaenys knows what's up. Okay. Anything else?
I think that's it. So this has been episode 2 of Welcome to the Writer's Room. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed it, we would really appreciate if you interacted, liked, shared this with other people. We'd love to get these episodes to as many people as we can.
See you next time for our episode 3 of House of the Dragon.
I'm Alex.
And I'm Madison.
And this has been Welcome to the Writer's Room.